How often should you be changing the litter in your chicken house if you're using the deep litter system? Well, in today's video, that's the question I'm going to be answering, and I'm going to be teaching you guys good litter management practices. Please stick around. So guys, welcome back to Farm Up. My name is Daniel. I'm very passionate about farming, poultry farming in this instance, but farming in general. And in case it's your first time on this channel, so far, we talk about poultry farming in all the different ways. If you've never done any kind of poultry farming and you want to learn, start how to do it, I'll leave a link right here where you can click and watch everything you need to know about poultry farming, all the best practices. Even an absolute amateur will be able to understand these things. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, that way you don't miss out on any upload, and don't forget to click that like button. So this is a question I've been getting very often, and I was thinking, instead of replying it over and over and over and over again, why not just make a video about it? We're going to be talking about litter. How do you manage the litter on your poultry farm, okay? How often do you change the litter? Now, this is not a very hard question. Actually, there's no direct answer. I can't tell you to change your litter after 1 year or after 6 months, or to never change the litter. But I'm going to help you understand, and you'll decide how often you should change your litter. The more important thing actually is the litter management. There are things that you need to think about when you're putting the litter in your chicken house. Number one, the thickness of the litter in your chicken house. There are different things that can be used for litter, for making, the bedding in your chicken house, and I'll probably talk about that in a different video. But I use wood chips. I don't think they're called wood chips, wood shavings. Yeah, you can see them. They're not very thin, they are thick. Of course, with time they break down, but yeah, they need to be thick, not very thin, because if they are very thin, the baby chicks, as they have just come in, will be allergic to them, and they could cause them respiratory illnesses and that kind of stuff. So you want them, to be chips or shavings and not sawdust. Okay, so the bedding should be 4 to 6 inches thick. That's very, very important, because number one, for the bedding to be able to provide insulation for the birds, it needs to be thick. Number two, when the birds poop, the birds keep scratching in the bedding and all this kind of stuff. They scratch it and turn it and turn it and turn it. Yeah. So if it is very thin, it's going to get saturated with the chicken manure very quickly. That manure has ammonia, which could get very toxic for the birds. Okay. So you want it to be thick enough to be able to absorb as much of that nitrogen as possible. As the chickens turn it, it keeps going down and coming up, going down and coming up. So you're not going to have problems in your chicken house. If you keep a very thin layer, your birds will even be very susceptible to respiratory illnesses, like I told you, because of the ammonia. So keep it thick. If you keep it thick, it will stay longer in the chicken house. Number two, keep it dry. Actually, this is the most important thing. You need to keep your litter dry. Yeah. So if you have drinkers around, like the drinkers I use on my poultry farm, you might have a problem with that, because as the chickens drink the water, it spills and it spills. But if you can construct your chicken house in such a way that the drinkers are in a place where the water will not be spilling onto the litter, then you're better off. Okay. But if you're using a system like mine where the water keeps spilling, what you need to do is the places around the drinkers, you need to be recycling the litter often. So you get out the wet litter or the damp litter and replace it with new litter. That way you won't need to change the whole house very often. Number three, avoid caking of the litter. Okay, now this is something which comes very easily, because in particular areas the chickens will just keep padding on the litter, playing around on the litter without scratching it, and it will cake. And in case some moisture falls there, it will cake. So the top part, because the chickens poop and everything, will be wet, but the bottom part of the litter will actually be very dry and in very good condition. And the other thing is the places just under the patches. They are very, very notorious for caking, because the chickens just keep pooping and pooping in the same place because they sleep in those places. Yeah, so you need to make sure you get a forked hoe. Don't use a normal hoe or a rake. A rake is quite hard to use. You use a forked hoe to be able to turn the litter. Let me show you. So as you keep turning the litter, you know, the damp litter will go down and the dry litter comes up and the things keep drying. That way you'll be able to maintain good quality of the litter. And this should be turned as often as possible, you know, every day, every 2 days, at worst once a week, okay? But you should be able to turn that litter as often as possible. Now, the other thing which is very important is that each flock of birds must start with new litter. Each flock. Don't make the mistake of using old litter in a new flock of birds. That's very detrimental, that's very horrible, because the old litter already has infections. The new birds that are coming in haven't developed any immunity against anything. So you're going to leave that old litter there and the birds are going to get sick. So make sure you use new litter for every flock of birds. So if you're keeping broilers, because broilers don't take a very long time to be kept, you know, usually 6 weeks. Some people keep them up to 10 weeks, depending on which style you're using to keep them. The broilers will be out in a really short time, so you don't need to change the litter ever. As long as you keep thick, as long as you keep the litter thick, you won't need to turn it. Now, on my farm, I've been changing the litter once every 6 months, okay? That's the compromise I got, and I found out it works well for me. I keep turning it every day, like I told you guys, but I've been replacing it once every 6 months because the litter gets damp, okay, over time because of the spillages from the water. But I know people who never change the litter until the whole flock is out, you know, layers, 1.5 years, 2 years, from the time they bring them in until they get out. Why? Because the litter never gets wet, it never gets damp, so it will remain dry and it's thick enough. And if you do that, you know, keep it thick enough, 6 inches, keep it dry, turn it every day. You won't need to replace that litter for the entire time, you know. If you get a few patches which are damp and anything like that, you get them out. Replace those patches with new litter. You'll be able to keep your litter in for the whole time that you have the birds. But if you want to use your litter as manure, you know, it's very important for you. You keep replacing it as manure. Then you can even change it, you know, every 3 months, because 2-3 months you've already formed enough manure in the poultry house, so you can change it every 3 months, 4 months. That way you keep getting manure for your farm, and then you just bring in new wood chips or sawdust or whatever you're using as your bedding. So guys, yeah, that was it. I hope I've answered the question. Yeah, I've tried to do it to the very best of my ability. And in case you have any other questions that you might want answered or things like that, just leave them in the comment section below. I'll answer as many as I can, or probably make a video about it. So guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button. I love you guys a lot, you know. And see you next time on the same channel. Bye bye.